welcome to spring. It's been quite a winter here, huh? Okay, that's your official notice that we are recording this event to help us move forward with dialogue with the Charlevoix County Sheriff's Department. We have how many people on Zoom? 51 and probably growing on Zoom, and we have over 50 here now. So 64 right now here. So we know it's a very important situation we have and find a seat. It's a lot easier getting up this right stairs perhaps than the left stairs. So we are, as you can tell, zooming you to the people on the Zoom, and the zooming see you and we see them to different degrees. So we're doing the best we can with our technology to keep everyone informed and involved in this important forum. I'm going to start with introductions. I'm Bobby Welke, St. James Township Supervisor. Vicki Fingerroot is a St. James Township Trustee. Paul is here representing the Chamber of Commerce, not necessarily St. James Township, unless he wants to kick me and say something to me quietly. We do have another member of the township in the audience, and we have a couple people from Payne Township who want to listen in and understand what's going on here on the island. So again, we know this public safety forum is very important. This is second in a series. How many of you were here November 2nd last year and heard about, participated? That session was set up, and the ones that were to follow were all about Joe Callion. Let's talk about Joe for a second. On your sign-in table were brochures. Feel free to pick them up for yourself, for your home, for your family, for your visitors. It's all about preparing for emergencies on Beaver Island. This was developed after our blackout that we had in early in November 22, excuse me, about how we need to, people who are unfamiliar, plan for emergencies. So it's quite an informative document to share. The Charlevoix County Community Foundation paid for the printing, so that was pretty cool. So there's copies of this available here at the community center and other offices, and a few left here up front. Joe's back in California and he's improving.
Purdue going out early, and
sounds like we need to zoom somebody, mute somebody else. Okay. So before we get started in the details that you're here for, I just need to explain this is not a township meeting. It is simply a public forum that we happen to be putting on and trying to help understand what the situation is. So we as a township and Payne Township can move forward in dealing with the situation. We are not here to vote for anything. We're not here to pass a resolution for anything. And because of that, this is not an official township meeting. So I just want you all to be aware of that. So we want to understand what's been happening the last 2 months, not just this weekend. Joe left the island towards the end of January. So we want to hear about your experiences in February and March. More specifically, we would like you to record your experiences on a document we have here. A document after this meeting will be put up on social media to fill it in, because our intent is to take that information, and I'll explain what you have to record here shortly, but it is our intent to take all those forms that are filled out. You've got until 10 o'clock Friday morning to fill out the form and send it over to the Sheriff's Department with a formal request that they review and investigate all of our concerns. And then in the first week in April, township officials would like to meet with him in person and go over every example and understand whether it's appropriate police action or not. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to get to. But that said, you need to understand what the forum looks like. We need to talk about what our goals are. Joe established community policing here. it was recognized by the sheriff's department with how he policed on this island. And we want to simply go back to that model. And how do we do that? How do we get community policing rather than the policing style that many of you have experienced? It's changed our behavior. Some of us are now using turn signals. Some of us are cleaning our license plates off. Some of us are choosing not to park on the wrong side of the road. And I will tell you, that's one of the most dangerous causes of accidents anywhere in the world, when you park on the wrong side of the road. Further, you might want to check with your insurance company, because if your car gets hit, I believe if you're parking illegally, your insurance will not pay for any damage. But that's up to you to check out those situations. So we know behavior is changing here, but we really need to reestablish that positive interaction with the sheriff's department and get back to that community policing model. And we also need to restore trust in law enforcement, because we can simply say it doesn't exist anymore here on the island, depending on, or as you say. We are going to get in the statistics so we can share with the department why us, and are you doing the same thing in Charlevoix County? How many of you here had a traffic stop and or a pedestrian stop? If you're willing to raise your arms so we can just count the numbers. Okay, or anyone associated with you. So roughly I'm seeing about 10 or so here. I'm sure a lot of people zooming in who have been on the island might have some as well. We're hearing far more, and there are probably people who are not here. We also know there's a loss to business. People are staying home. They're not getting out on our holiday weekend and so forth because of their fear of what will happen. We want to hear about that too, because that's also, if your behavior changed to doing something illegal to doing something legal, like turning on your turn signals, we don't need to hear about that. What I do need to hear, we need to hear, is what behavior change that has nothing to do with legal and illegal. Did you stay home? Did you miss out on St. Patrick's Day because you did not want to get yourself into any kind of trouble, deserved or undeserved? So before Friday at 10, we'd like you to fill out this form. I'm going to talk about the form now. So on the table down here, if you pick up and fill out the form, there are pens here, there are forms here. If you want to come back another day or pick up, the community center has a pack of these here, and they will also be the collection point. Drop your form off back at the community center. We will pick them up at 10 o'clock on Friday. And as I said, put a cover letter on, send them to the sheriff and say, please investigate this. Now, keep in mind, in many cases, but not necessarily all cases, the deputies could have been wearing body cameras. So anything you write will be compared to the body cameras. This form simply says it's a description of a Charlevoix County Sheriff Department's traffic stop involving drivers or pedestrians and other personal behavior due to fear of police actions on Beaver Island for the February-March 2023 period. We're asking you to complete it by 10 Friday and drop it off back here at the community center. We're asking you to print your name, sign your name, tell us the date of the traffic stop, the time of the day, and the location of the stop. And then there's a space below where you fill out your circumstances. You can use the backside if you have a lot of circumstances just to share with us. So, and then at the bottom is simple, a disclaimer to say what we're going to do with your data and your information. So I'm done with all this introduction. Yes, the form will be online through social media, including this and that later today with the bodegas, Facebook and other places. So the form is accessible to everybody, not just here. So we are here to listen to you. we'd like to listen to firsthand experience if at all possible, and or take the form to people had the experience and ask them to fill it out and drop it off. So who's first? Paul here will take a microphone around and share your circumstances. Someone's afraid of being first. I will tell you my behavior changed this weekend. I did not get stopped though. I cleaned my license. My family and I went around the island on a beautiful Sunday, cleaned my license plate at my home here in town, cleaned my license plate at Iron Ore Bay, used turn signals everywhere, made sure I drove the speed limit. There's no alcohol in the vehicle whatsoever. There's no one in the vehicle smelling of alcohol. So I thought I lined up everything, but it's not something I can record on any document because all I was doing was following the law. Yes.
That all transpired, just lay the groundwork.
I'll paraphrase her question. So I was asked to explain the circumstances of why do we have police here, what's going on, kind of a little history perspective and where we're going from here. Since Joe left the island, we're entitled to law enforcement. And our sheriff looked for, or at least told me he looked for a retired officer who would be willing to come and work the island until we get a new deputy who was supposed to be coming to us, let's say mid-May. When he completes school, Joe would be the training officer. Now, when he completes school, we have no training officer here. So he will be assigned Charlevoix County for some amount of time. I have no idea how long it takes a training officer to get through their cycle. So in the meantime, the sheriff is in a pickle. He's not finding anyone to do that kind of background to come to the island. So he's sending people on weekends. Some of the deputies coming have never been here before and are thrilled with the experience. Some of them have been. It seems like they all have heard rumors that aren't necessarily true. And they wanted to make sure they had a presence here over the holiday weekend. Will this continue on weekends? Probably. Will it be 2 people? Probably not, but I'm simply guessing. I don't know the facts. Yeah, Deb.
You could wait just because if it's not on the mic.
I'm just wondering if anyone has had any contact with Chuck Andre yet to find out if this was a directive that these people were given to do this, or if these, honestly, I didn't even see them because I don't go out on St. Patrick's Day weekend, but, or is this something that they did on their own?
I have had a talk with the deputy. Nobody on the board knows about it, and I apologize for not sharing. One board member heard the conversation, was asked to be quiet during the conversation because it was between Chuck and myself. I didn't ask the questions in what you're asking. It was more about his frustration. He heard about the forum. And he said, what's going on? Why are you having it? What are you expecting to get out of it? Don't you think we should enforce? I said, yes, we should enforce, but the same enforcement that you do in Charlevoix County. And if he enforces like this in Charlevoix County, I never want to live. And when I say Charlevoix County, I mean the mainland. I'm sorry. I don't want to live there. I told him we're collecting information. We're going to sit down and share that with him or send it to him and then sit down with him and review that. He says, we're looking at the camera images right now. Our deputies were professional. We're just doing their jobs. He said, don't you want to get the alcohol people off the streets? Yes, absolutely. I don't know that he knows what's really happening here. And that's where we're coming to you to say, you have to help us to put it in writing. I've heard, and I don't want to live in the rumors mills here, but it's possible they didn't have their cameras on. And so he's hearing their side of the story, their reports and their cameras. So we have to make the case of what really happened here. What direction they gave to him, I don't know. I have a feeling it was more than We just want to get back to proper community policing, and how do we do that? We need to reestablish our relationship.
There's a question from somebody on the chat that said, let me pull it up, sorry. And I want to make sure it gets answered, which Bobby just did, but I want to acknowledge it. Did someone from the island request 4 deputies, or was that a decision made by Vandra?
It's my understanding there were only 2 deputies here. I think some people confuse. We have a reserve deputy officer living on the island, and he's been doing all the patrols in between the arrivers. In between the deputies that come across. He might escort them. I know he picks them up at the airport and takes them back to the airport. What he does with him, I intended to meet with him and discuss privately what's going on. Then I was sent a message that he's not allowed to talk to anyone except about enforcement, and that I have to talk to Sheriff Andra. I did that. I checked all the boxes. I've done the best I can to set us up for success and moving forward in a different manner. Doesn't mean it's going to happen this weekend. It doesn't mean it will happen by next weekend. I just can't tell you what's going to happen until we get in the first part of April and we have a sit down face to face and talk about what's really happening. We know there's, I don't have the exact number. I'm going to say about 5 or 6 festivals on the mainland. And according to their website, they use reserve officers to patrol that. Okay, then if you do that, why don't you use reserve officers here? If you're doing law enforcement there, how many people have you pulled over at any one of those events compared to the numbers that are pulled over here? So to me, it's all about the statistics and the facts. And we need your help getting those facts. Did I answer the question? I'm guessing he sent 2 over because it was the holiday. It's just a guess on my part. Any other questions, comments? Hang on. Microphone. Remember, our friends in the Zoom land need to hear.
Has the county commissioner, our county commissioner, been notified, or has he contacted you? And is it Scott Hankins?
It is Scott Hankins. I've met him. He said, anything you need, just talk to me. He's an ex-police officer, retired police officer in Charlotte.
He's on the Zoom call right now.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Is he going to come over to the island?
He's here. He's on the Zoom call right now.
Oh. The comment was policing is one thing and police harassment is another thing. And Scott Hankins, the county commissioner, is on, and he said, be specific, what exact harassment has occurred. So this, if I can say something, this goes to the reason of this meeting. Our goal is to have a good working relationship with Charlevoix County and who they send over. They respect us, we respect them. We want to hear, because there was supposedly recorders, body cams. If somebody was rude to a police officer, we want to know what you said. You know, you're angry and you said, go jump in the lake or whatever the case may be. Please fill that out and give us that information, because if we're going to go over and speak, or Supervisor Wilkie's going to go over and speak, then she needs to not be caught off guard. So we're asking for true, honest accounts. If I was told by somebody today that somebody was pulled over and a police car was in the middle of the road and they had to go around them, that concerned them. We want to know those incidents. We want to know if you were afraid to come to town. I didn't go out Saturday night because I wasn't going to come to town. So you missed out on the music. So anything and any information or data you can give us that is factual, not hearsay, that is what we are looking for, to gather data.
Oh, thank you, Vicki. And don't editorialize your comment. Just say what happened. Don't say you're allowed to say what you thought and how you felt, but don't give another shot. When I talked to the sheriff, he was frustrated. He was excited in a nervous way and said, we had one guy threatened to get thrown in the trunk. One guy being a deputy, threatened by someone here to get thrown in somebody's trunk. Theirs, I don't know. We don't need that behavior on our part, but I recognize the frustration level. But again, we're very consistent. We need your data. or this is gonna all fall apart on us in terms of trying to reach that level of police enforcement that we need here. I've, in my position, which I've had since July, I've worked hard with county officials. I've showed up at meetings, totally unexpected, invited to meetings, totally unexpected that I'd show up, and even dragged Doug Tilley to 2 of the meetings in 1 week, because it's important that we have relationships with Charlevoix County, whether it's talking about emergency planning, equalization issues, whatever it be. I'll give you another example. One of my annoyances is how we have to post everything in a newspaper. And for us, that usually means a Petoskey paper or a Charlevoix County paper. And it's a 1963 law. Hasn't the newspaper industry changed since 1963? Because these postings are expensive. And these postings are going to go up, in particular for one event that all townships, all villages and cities have to host. It's the Board of Review meetings. This year, 3 days of posting in the Petoskey paper cost us collectively, I'm not going to get my number right, but let's say $2,700. Next year, it goes up to $8,400. So I've turned that over to Representative Frisky to say, amongst things we talked about, please get involved in this newspaper legislation from 1963 and modernize it. Now, I've had some people said, hey, you're on the island, we can waive that. And I said, no, treat us the same, treat us like everyone else. So we're not accused of being special. We know we live in a special place, a unique remote place. So any accommodations I've ever asked for was, is there any allowance to change your meeting to the middle of the day so I can fly in and fly out as opposed to spend the night? And if the answer was no, that's fine. I either Zoomed in or got a hotel room. Okay, I'm costing certain taxpayers some money, but it's about relationships and creating those relationships, creating those trusts, and getting government done the right way. So are there any other questions and or experiences to be shared?
Hi, I was pulled over Saturday night for a broken taillight. It turns out I have a broken taillight. I think the statistic I'd like to point out right here, there are about 70 of us in this room and 10 people raise their hands. So that's 15% of us were pulled over. Is Charlevoix's percentage the same? If it is, if they say they pull over 15%, we don't have a lot to argue about. But I think that's a pretty potent statistic right now.
That's well said. It is about the statistics, and it's about trust and having trust in police officers. We know we need police officers here. We know there are people that need to be dealt with. We know we have some crashes, not as many as other places, but we know we need their service. We just need it to be the right service for the right reason and the right way. Is it lack of training or something that we can help guide them to? We've done a lot of research on that. We have some ideas on that, but we don't want to pull those strings. We want to simply work properly. Another question?
Yeah, let me.
Or just read their question, written question. Okay, we have a Zoom person going to share their experience.
Can you hear me, Vicky?
Oh, yeah, you are ready to speak.
Oh, hi. Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Ledbetter. Friday night, Herb and myself were down at Beachcomber. Herb was playing. He was not drinking. I was drinking. I had 2 gin and tonics. We got pulled over on the way home, probably around midnight, because a front headlight was out, which I didn't know until I got pulled over. Or Herb was driving. I didn't get pulled over. He was asked to step out of the car so they could ensure that he was not drinking. Now, I've never had anyone have me step out of a car because a taillight or a headlight was not working.
Carrie, thank you for sharing. We suspect there are other similar examples out there. We need to focus on what's important, and we need your help. Tell us what's important, what happened. So we got a microphone moving to Amanda.
I'm just trying to get the ball rolling here, folks. I didn't get pulled over, but I will say that on Friday and 2 round trips Saturday and 1 trip into town Sunday, we took Buddy Martin's Trail. That added 10 minutes to our drive with a 4.5-month-old child. We were nervous to drive to town, even to church on Sunday, because we didn't want to get pulled over. We had no reason. I did buy some alcohol at McDonald's, but I covered it up on Saturday because I didn't want them to think that I had been drinking that alcohol in the back seat next to my 4.5-month-old child.
Thank you for sharing. There's got to be other stories out there that people want to share. We're moving the microphone. I've heard the word profiling being used and I just don't, that's something we'll talk with the sheriff about when we present the data. Go ahead.
I was a passenger of someone who got pulled over, Alex. It was Friday around maybe 11:30 midnight. I had been drinking. Based on everything that had happened, I asked if he could pick me up. He hadn't been. And I didn't see any car following us, but about from town to after the S curve going out to Font Lake, the cop was following us and then pulled us over right a bit after the S curve. Asked for, license, registration, and said that we had a cracked back taillight. And then that's why we asked if that's why he pulled us over. And he said, no, it was because we weren't staying on the left side of the road or the right side enough. And then he said, I know it's hard since there's no yellow lines to see where you are on the road, but try and keep it to one side. And it was very professional and very short of an encounter, but you know how the curve goes. You don't want to stay all the way over. You'll fall into the ditch or hit a pothole. So yeah, that was our experience. And yeah, nothing else happened out of the sort. And I think it's just a culmination of all these experiences that seems like it's, aggressive if they're following you until you mess up or something.
So the question I would be asking, if you put that in writing of the sheriff, is, do you do this in Charlevoix County? Now, it's mainland. It's easy for him to say yes. And how do we know the difference? So we've got that issue too. One last comment, another comment about our hit of our community in terms of the businesses. It's not just the businesses losing money, it's the employees. People who, struggle to make a living and pay for housing and so forth. So this is, again, another reason it's a big deal and it matters. There's got to be other experiences or observations.
I just wanted to make a quick comment that, the more that I reflect upon this is like, whether or not they're reviewing their cameras and they feel that everything was completely appropriate, what I consistently go back into my brain is like the level of people that got pulled over with our population. So that's where the data is really important. Like if somebody that got pulled over that's not here today, or anybody that's on Zoom that had an experience, we need to know about that, because statistically, and strategically as a township supervisor and board is proportionally the data I think is going to say statistically is way high. You came over for a weekend and you pulled X amount of people over this percentage. That's not community policing. That's just not community policing. And that's what we really are that's the focus is why did you deviate from community policing that Joe did that was so effective?
Yeah, just quickly, George Broder, I was not pulled over, but I did not come into town Friday night or Saturday night. I would have been legal, but I just did not want to risk an unpleasant encounter. Didn't come into town.
Thank you for sharing, George.
Can somebody on Zoom talk real quick?
Okay, go ahead.
All right, this is me, Corey Atkins. Stuff is off in the wings here. And as a lot of you know, we've been coming there since about 2009. I fall in love with the place, a lot of you. We always purposely find a place where we can walk from. Because we know we're gonna have a few drinks downtown.
Hey, Corey, could you turn your video off and just talk to us? There's a lot of breakup and we're having a hard time hearing you.
How's this? Is this better?
Much better. Thank you.
So we always find a place to walk so we can walk to town.
Corey, you're still broken up. We're aware of your issue. You put together very nice emails. The emails can be attached to the form, but I will caution that maybe there were 3 sentences where you said, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? Or words to that effect. To me, that's editorial. You're entitled to do that. But if I were writing it, I'd take that out and just give us the facts. Joe Friday, just give us the facts. Don't challenge the police in a statement. Was it right for them to do what they did? Just, so I didn't mean to throw you under the rug, but I apologize for doing it. So.
No, it's fine. I get you. It was just odd that we got pulled over for kind of walking home, and 2 nice ladies offered us a ride back to our rental, and I'll rewrite it and get it back to you. But that was our experience, and I don't think it was.
Thank you. That's the example I gave with the sheriff when he called me to talk about what's happening here tonight. I mentioned the driver. I mentioned she had cookies. I mentioned she stopped to offer 2 people walking in this cold, windy weather in the evening a ride to the rental. They stopped in their lane, asked the question, so the police stopped them and confronted them on several things, not necessarily in the order I'm saying because I don't recall the order, but what are those cookies for? And I told the sheriff, why would they care about cookies? Is it because you think there's marijuana in it? Yes, was his answer. That's what we're dealing with, folks. I smell alcohol. The people in that car were not drinking, have not drank, we're not drinking, we're not drunk, and so forth. The one person that was walking got in the car. The other person did not, stayed out of the car. He just talked on the Zoom. They came up to him, flashing lights in his face. Why are you walking? I prefer to walk home. Thank you very much. You know, he had to defend. You're guilty and you have to defend yourself instead of being innocent. I said that badly, but you know what I mean. You have to, you're treated like you're guilty and you have to prove your innocence. And that's not the way we're supposed to work here.
On Zoom, there's a question on Zoom from Vicky Smith asking if you could define community policing.
Good model, community policing.
It's really not that complicated. A lot of places in the country have over the past decade or 2 moved to a community policing model. And the philosophical pillar of that model is that you develop really strong relationships with community partners, business leaders, and as many citizens in your community as possible, so that those relationships, if somebody has a infraction or a possible infraction, or there's a difficult situation, that relationship is developed, that they can figure out a solution that is workable for the whole community or that individual. So it's making the investment in the community and developing clear relationships rather than, I'm John Smith, deputy. I don't care who you are or what you're doing. I'm strictly going to follow the rule of the law, no matter what. If your dog just died today and you were speeding, I don't care. Like, you know, you're going to get a ticket. So it's a training that police officers go through. And, you know, I had the opportunity working in school districts. You know, we didn't let police officers that had to come to school were required to be trained in a community policing model because you handle things a lot differently. It's communication skills are very high. So when I watched Joe doing his job a couple of times, I was like, he's trained in community policing. I could tell right away. So it's just really important that we as a community continue to advocate that we're a small rural community, and we have to have strong relationships with our law enforcement officers. And they have to approach the situation differently. And it's not an uncommon model. It's a very common model in the United States, which has a lot of data behind it and is very effective.
I'd like to add to the comments Paul just said, while the microphone's moving across the audience here. We're kicking around the idea of asking, can we have one deputy come across? It's the same person every weekend, and we will have an open house for that deputy to meet you all, to get to know you. It's not like they're going to memorize names, but at least they'll recognize faces and things like that to
And
try and introduce
We
that.
will probably have cookies for him.
Bobby, you said usually they have one officer coming over for the weekend. I think the sheriff should be asked, how many cities, counties in the county doubled their policing force for St. Patrick's Day? Or was only Beaver Island profile?
Must be the Irish roots, huh? Yeah, it's a question well to ask. We've got someone taking notes as well, not just videoing, recording the video, so we can take action on what we're hearing here.
I just want to pick up where Paul left off about community policing. We all, or probably most of us, have heard in the past couple of months that there has been a couple of incidents here, and not with our adolescent kids or even teenagers. These were adults, and some things that happened where 911 was called. And when we talk about community policing, we have to talk about some people's responsibility in this community too. And that might be a little bit of the reason why the sheriff feels the need to send somebody over here with the absence of Joe. Joe could handle these guys, but there's been some incidents that are not right. And I think if we deal with that locally, the sheriff would love to be able to say, yeah, I don't need to send somebody over there. You guys can take care of yourselves. So.
Are you talking about a local police officer or locally us here? Us here. Bill's talking about us here handling that. You know, should we really say stay in Charlevoix, don't come? I don't know. I hear you like that, but
Can I
Well,
say?
I mean,
I have had the conversation with the sheriff. I think vehicles on the roads on Beaver Island should be registered and insured, and the person driving them should have a driver's license. If you're wearing a seatbelt, if you're rolling through a stop sign, if you forget to turn on your turn signal, there's nobody coming. Let's pick our battles. So I think he's in agreement with that, but if someone is acting out of line or very erratic or something, then yes, there's a legitimate cause to pull them over. And if they are very intoxicated, deal with it. But I say, don't go looking for trouble. If there's a problem, they'll see it.
I agree with Bill's position on this. I will share one other story I was involved in. Started a certain gas station to do this tour, left the gas station, and someone had a very filthy back of their van. Don't know who the people were. That's irrelevant. And I said, you know, the deputies are stopping people where they can't see the license plate. And she says, well, I was thinking about cleaning off the lenses, but that might show them something that I don't want them to see. I'm sorry. I bet you 90% of the people in this room have proper license and insurance and so forth. Why not everybody else? I have no sympathy for people who don't have those. I'm sorry.
I want to take a whole show of hands here because I want to eliminate any perception from any of the law enforcement people that are in Charlevoix, and they have to come over here. We are all tax-paying citizens of Charlevoix. Can I see a show of hands if anybody agrees that people should be able to drink and drive and be drunk drivers? So we all agree that we understand that driving is a privilege and that drinking and driving is not okay, correct? Show of hands who agrees with that. Unanimous. So I think that that's important for Charlevoix County Sheriff to understand And at one point, I hope that we will invite him over to get to know that we are law-abiding citizens and not a bunch of outlaws. Would everyone agree with that?
Yeah, our intent after this April meeting is to ask him to come over and talk with all of us, including ourselves who had the meeting with him, where we're at and where we're going. So we're trying to do this together. We're trying to keep you informed. I'm sharing things with you that I didn't even share with fellow board members because I was asked a question and my mother told me not to lie. So I couldn't lie to Deb.
Oh, she has? Okay.
Sorry, we missed that. We're getting to you.
Mary Beth, go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just want to say that I think that we need to stress to the sheriff, and maybe police officers don't realize this, but it's incredibly intimidating and it's incredibly, for some people, terrifying to be stopped by the police. And even if you didn't do anything wrong, I've probably been stopped as a driver twice in my I'm 60 years old. I've been driving since I've been 16, and my heart started beating faster both times. And on Friday night, when my van was stopped with a designated driver at the wheel, I wasn't given a very satisfactory answer as to what the reasonable suspicion.
Yeah, she muted. Mary Beth, you got muted. Hang on. Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
I probably was going on too long anyway. I don't know, where did I get muted?
Reasonable suspicion when you were pulled over.
Yeah, I mean, basically what I think we were told after he ordered our completely sober driver out of the vehicle to perform sobriety tests, was that she had turned the blinker on because she was going to turn off the road onto a different road. And when we said, no, it's you need to go up one more road, she turned the blinker off. And that was the only explanation. But what I wanted to get back to is that I think that there's a perception that Beaver Island is this lawless community full of people that turn a blind eye to extremely drunk people operating motor vehicles on the road. And I really don't think that there's anything further from the truth. And I hope that the result of all of this is that gets communicated to the sheriff. And as far as starting, your own township police or whatever, you're not going to keep sheriff's deputies and state police off Beaver Island. They have jurisdiction and they can go wherever they want. So the goal, I think, of all of us, is to try to, have a conversation and improve the relationship and to cultivate an environment of respectful coexistence between the police and the people that reside on Beaver Island, who are hardworking, good people. One of the accounts I heard was somebody that was working at the Shamrock on the March 17th and was pulled over for some sort of a headlight, maybe a tail light too dim or too bright, followed 3 miles for that, and then questioned with regard to why their car was at the Shamrock for so long. And this is a person who had worked a 12-hour shift. I know that a lot of people were questioned with regard to how long their cars were parked in certain locations. I've heard from people who said that during the traffic stop, one or both of the, not the officer on the driver's side, but on the passenger side, and continually on his sidearm during the traffic stop. I have a client who was ticketed for something that was not drunk driving, but he is disabled as a result of cancer and has a speech impediment. and was stopped and tried to explain that the reason that his speech was different was because that he didn't have part of his tongue. And basically the response was from the officer, "Don't F-U-C-K with me." And so I just want to say that I'm very appreciative that Commissioner Hankins is on this Zoom call, that he cares enough to listen to it. I did do a Freedom of Information Act request to the Central Dispatch, asking to view the records with regard to the number of stops for over a certain period of time. So all of that information will be, it's public information. But as far as people's actual experiences, I only have maybe 10 examples. And I've already given them to everybody. But again, it's not fun to be pulled over. And then on Saturday, I was the person that was going to go pick people up to and from downtown. And I cleared off my license plate, snow off of my license plate too, and was quite frankly intimidated and afraid that I was going to get pulled over too. And I had no beer in my car, no booze in my car, no nothing. And we had a driver. So I just really don't understand why what happened.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
So the microphone's moving to the other side of the room. There is a petition here at the table. The townships are not involved in that. It's a citizen endeavor, which everyone's entitled to. So I want to bring that to your attention. And the 911 investigation, we're not involved in that. But if we get data, we'll use data. Go ahead, Ron.
Yes, this is Ron Wojan. I'm a lifelong resident of Beaver Island, and I also have a home in Petoskey, Michigan. So I think Mary Beth Kerr is on the right track, and I came here today to try to help explain why I think this is happening. So Beaver Island gets a bad rap, undeservedly so. It's not justified. It's just a bad rap because people on the mainland, Charlottesville and Petoskey, they think this is the Wild West over here. And it's the furthest thing from it. So what I think this is something that's come down over time. And I follow the history of the island, and I'm sixth generation on my mother's side and fourth on my dad's. And you go back, you don't have to go back very far, but there was a time back when Archie Lavner owned the Shamrock that he bought the glass for the front windows in cases of 12 because somebody went through there almost every weekend. So, but that's 100 years ago, so what has happened over time is we can't seem to shake that reputation. And Mary Beth is on the right track. I'm not as concerned about what happened this weekend because I've seen it before. And my understanding of it is did those people, what I want to get to the bottom of is, did those police officers come here prejudiced with, and by who? That we are lawless and they were on a mission to write a bunch of tickets this weekend. And unfortunately for them, they didn't get one DUI or anything. So if Mary Beth alluded to it, but I'm saying we have got to get to the bottom of it with our relationship with Charleroi about why do we have this reputation, undeserved reputation, and are the police officers that are being sent here? And I think they are predisposed to thinking that they need to come over here and teach us a lesson. And so I believe that's what happened I believe that's what happened this past weekend. And I was township supervisor here for 6 years, and I dealt with all this back at that time from 86 to 91. It happens at homecoming. It happens at different times when they think what we need, and we have requested at homecoming additional police officers because it was a kind of a rowdy time with the baseball tournaments and everything. But There never was any major problems that I'm aware of. There's always a few. But communities need policing because when a person is being abused or threatened, you have got to call somebody. You need the protection. But with this problem, we need to get to the bottom of this undeserved reputation of being a lawless community. And it's come down from 100 years ago, I'm sure it has. And we just can't seem to shake it. And so I think in the course of this, talking to the sheriff and everybody else, we've got to see if those police officers were predisposed to the idea that this was going to be some type of weekend over here where they needed to be doing what they were doing. And if we can't get to the bottom of that, it's going to continue to happen in the future. So I hope we can concentrate on, when we are talking to the sheriff, that it's a bigger problem than just what happened this weekend. We've got to get to the bottom of why this continues to happen.
Well spoken, Ron. I think you're hitting part of the symptom or what's causing us to have this situation, and we need to correct that.
I'm a little bit, Debbie Robert here, I'm a little bit reluctant to speak because it wasn't me, it was my husband. So I'm going to give very few details because I'll let him write out his own accounting of it. He was told that the reason that they were pulling him over, and they didn't pull him over, he kind of pulled off to the side and waited for him because they'd been following him. And they said, well, now we have the reason because you're blocking a public roadway. White Cedar Trail, so all of the other 2 people in here that live on that road, sorry if he was blocking it. I'm just being sorry. You spoke of, were they predisposed? John asked them. He said, I sat on the side of the road waiting for him. He said, because I want to ask him, why are you doing this? And he said they were told, or that he was told by the police officer, that they were told by a parent that they were afraid to put their children in a car after dark on Beaver Island because of all of the drunks on the road. So were they predisposed? Oh, heck yes. And if that's what they're seeing or thinking when they come over here, of course they do. And I agree with them sending more than one person over. These 2, I'm guessing fairly young police officers, didn't know anybody here. I wouldn't want to come by myself either. They don't know what they're getting themselves into. The number doesn't bother me so much as it's the tactic of it. And what is our goal here? We're raising kids in this community that need to not be afraid of the police officer that's going to follow them until they screw up. Because if you follow anybody long enough, you're going to find them making a mistake, whether it's your blinkers on too long or too short or whatever it is. You're going to find somebody, everybody's going to mess up if you follow them long enough.
Joe, right there in front of you.
I didn't get pulled over. I didn't go anywhere. I want you to know, though, that I was a Charlotte County Sheriff's Department auxiliary officer for 13 years. And this weekend, more people got pulled over than in the 13 years that I was an auxiliary officer. So that's pretty obvious that they were looking for something to do. And I also agree that these people need that to come over here. They need to get together with some of the island people and discuss things with them. Because there's no way in the world I could have gone down the West Side Road today, driving on the right-hand side. Absolutely no way. So, I mean, that there be certain things they need to be made aware of. And I think that's one way to do it, that you're doing it right here.
Yeah, we'll start with the sheriff, not the deputies themselves. We want to talk to the boss and figure this out and work to improve our relationship, because I don't want to confront these young people, myself or us as a group, without that kind of authority. I mean,
Brian Doman. I'll second Joe's West Side Drive comment. About a month ago, I actually got pulled over. I think it was the first time they had somebody over here. I got pulled over for not using my turn signal at the hardware store. He turned around, pulled me over. It was a very short encounter. thought it was reasonable, asked about things. What our relationship was and what we were coming from, which was work. We served him earlier that morning. A few weeks later, I was followed all the way down Kings Highway to Tom McCauley. And then last weekend, we were followed all the way to Sloptown. So leaving work, just leaving work, passing by the Beachcomber, going home.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I just want to comment on Mary Beth's comment, particularly in case the supervisor is still listening. When law enforcement pull over somebody, mainland or here on the island, and a designated driver introduces him or herself, the correct response is, thank you for doing that for you and your friends, not get out of the car and prove that you're not drunk.
Well said. We've spent an hour here. I don't know. I will tell you, this will be done by 5:45 at the latest, if not 5:30. Because of other things that have to happen yet tonight.
I have one story to share, but then I have a question. I have not been out driving around. Joe, you alluded to how bad the roads are. And I know that, as we said, Scott Hankins is on the call, and is anybody equipped to talk about the condition of the roads on the island right now? Because I go to the bodega and I go home, so I don't get out. But if somebody could comment on that, I think as an educational comment, factual, to explain what we are dealing with over here.
But yeah, we live down west side and we're down east side probably 3 times a week, all the way down to the south end. And you're on the left, you are on the right, you are all over, because the holes will destroy your vehicle if you don't crawl or dodge or something. And they can't do anything with the roads. If they do anything, it's just going to turn into a mud hole and it'll be a mess. So they got to wait till the frost and everything else. So yeah, I just figured I'd point that out. It's both east and west side.
So our roads are very muddy, and maybe these young sheriff deputies don't understand why they get muddy and how you have to drive a little bit more defensively.
Well, and some of the potholes are bad enough to where if you hit them more than 10, 15 miles an hour, you're going to damage your rims. You're going to damage your tires. You're going to damage your struts, your springs. And if we're expected to have vehicles that are roadworthy, why do we not have roads that are car worthy?
We need to talk about roads another time. Vicky and I just attended a meeting with Charlevoix County Road Commission. So if you want to hear more about it, Thursday is St. James Township public hearing on our budget and our truth and taxation meeting. And we're going to share at least St. James news at that meeting.
For those of you that know me, I ran the yacht dock and talked to 1 million boaters for 17 years. And one of the things that I used to tell them, that this is a sanctuary of sorts. It's a safe place. A woman or a child can walk down any road on this island at any time of night. And what's going to happen? Somebody's going to try to give them a ride home. Now, is that the truth or not? We are a community. Yes, it is. Yes, it is the truth, because we are a community that is above the normal situation on the mainland. It's safe. We have our problems. That's what we're all here to deal with. So if you have something to say, please don't be shy. Say it, but be proud of the fact that we live in such a place. Thank you very much.
Does anybody who's joining us from Zoom want to be unmuted? And you are able to unmute yourself. So if you have any comments, we'd like to hear them as well.
Hey, my name is Don, and thank you for letting me speak. I actually just acquired some land on Beaver, and I'm super excited about it because I've known about Beaver Island all my life as a Michigander born and raised. I'm very excited to be there, and so is my son. One thing I found really interesting on our first trip to Beaver on Sunday, actually, is that we had a lot of conversations with local persons who were really interested in this particular issue. And so I found it necessary to join this meeting because I really wanted to understand a little bit more. My presumption of the culture was very different than what you guys are talking about in your presumed persona, I guess, outside of the island. What you guys perceive yourselves as is kind of how everybody here, I guess maybe down south, sees you. We don't really see you as, I've never heard in my entire life any history of the lawlessness or anything that you're talking about. Maybe that's a Charlevoix Petoskey thing, I don't know, but certainly down here I've never heard any of that that history. But you know, I'm not a police officer in Charlevoix, so maybe they have a different perception. But that said, one thing I did find interesting is that there have been some rumors, and I'm only bringing this up not to create controversy, but I would as a newcomer like to hear some perceptions on this. The hemp company, some people had commented that the hemp company may have been bringing in some individuals that may have some interest in growing marijuana on the island, and that interest may have relationship to some of the activity, the police activity coming and going on the island, because they're trying to identify whether or not that interest is growing. And I just wanted to bring that up because as a newcomer, I don't really know the ecosystem. And it would be interesting to me to know if that were the case, if they are perceiving a potential rise in individuals that may be problematic, and that may be, you know, related to the random stops. So I found that interesting and would love to hear perceptions on that. Thank you.
Are there any perceptions on that? It's my understanding neither township has a marijuana ordinance because you can't bring it and haul it on the boat and or a plane because it's against federal laws. Does that mean someone snuck something in and is growing it for here on the island? I've not heard that. I'm seeing some shaking heads that we'd like to discount that rumor. Does anyone disagree and know of marijuana growing here on the island? So a company cannot be doing something that can't be hauled to or off this island to that degree. That's illegal. If you think the legality here on what we're doing from a road patrol, or the sheriff's doing from the road patrol, I bet you FAA and the US Coast Guard have a lot more rules.
But you do have a hemp company, is that true?
The answer is yes. Okay, that hemp company, we've just been informed by a former supervisor, is that they're licensed by the Department of Agriculture and is not for it's not marijuana related at all. Okay, guys, we're going to go back to traffic stops and other issues, please. We've got to wrap this up. We've been here a while.
This is Jeff Powers. If anybody has a question about my hemp license, I'd be glad to talk to them.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, it's Gina Mangra. I was really looking forward to being a reserve deputy this spring and working into the summer, but this debacle's really kind of changing my mind. I'm very familiar with the community policing, and I know how Joe ran things, and boy, I tell you, I'm debating not doing it anymore. Sorry.
So Gina, we're asking you not to make a decision today. Give us a month or so to kind of reset, restraight. You can talk to Steve privately. He apparently can't talk to me. but this will get better. It cannot continue on. It might continue on a little bit in the next couple weekends, but we've got to take care of this. Is Scott Hankins available or willing to discuss anything with the group? Go on, unmute.
I just unmuted, Bobby. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. And we see you.
Hi, guys. I've been listening to the entire conversation, and I've been making some notes. First of all, Bobby, when you come over to meet with the sheriff, I'd be happy to be part of that conversation as well.
Thank you.
I did ask earlier in the chat, and perhaps you can bring some specific examples with you when you come to meet with the sheriff, but I asked for specific examples of harassment. Being stopped by the police, while I will agree with Ms. Kerr to an extent, can be intimidating or unsettling. It is a common practice for police officers to do traffic enforcement, and that includes under a community policing model. And everything that I've heard so far in this forum, people have been stopped for legitimate reasons. I think that there's not been a great deal of traffic enforcement in the past on Beaver Island, and that may be a little unsettling for people. But Beaver Island is still part of the state of Michigan, still part of the county of Charlevoix, and it sounds to me, and let me say this too, anytime there's a special event in a city or in a county, for example, Venetian Festival, I worked a lot of those as a police officer. Anytime you have a specific event, like you recently had on the island with St. Patty's Day, you have a large amount of alcohol consumed. In fact, my understanding is you had a social district set up and a road closure as part of that. Anytime that type of event takes place, you're going to have a police presence there. And I think it's a warranted police presence there. You know, it's hard to respond to something from the mainland. So to have the police presence there, I think is a good thing. And I look forward to seeing if there are problems, and you were right to point out, Bobby, that you know, the officers are wearing body cameras just like they do on the mainland every day. They record their interactions with the public, and I look forward to, if there are specific problems or harassment that has taken place, then I believe that the sheriff will be very proactive in addressing that. On the flip side of that, if there are not harassing circumstances, you have to understand that the police have a job to do. So I'm not sure exactly until I see some of that, those reports or those forms. I guess I would reserve any further comment on that. But I would point out also that I found out about this this forum from another commissioner who sent a link to our county clerk, who forwarded it to me. I wasn't invited to be part of this forum, and I really do want to be proactive in representing the townships, but you have to let me know when things are going on too, folks. I live on the other side, unfortunately. So I appreciate the opportunity to address the group, and if anybody has any concerns, I'm on the Charlevoix County website. That's my cell phone. Please feel free to give me a call.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate your interest in caring about us as our representative. I just do want to say one clarifying comment, and maybe I misunderstood what you just said about the social district. The social district has existed for years. We were simply trying to figure out what are all the things a deputy could challenge us on if they see some drinking on the sidewalk in the legal cups that are allowed. So the information went to the sheriff to say, just so you know, there is a social district on Beaver Island from point A to point B. And it came back to me that he was unaware that we had a social district. The road closure happened at the last minute with verbal agreements that technically are supposed to happen at a legal meeting in Charlevoix County Road Commission. We did that too to make sure the closure wasn't illegal, if you will. So we'll work through those kind of details in the future to make sure things are legally done here.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
So this is Kevin Boyle, and I've been up in the booth making sure that things work right. But listening to Scott, I have to say, Scott, if you haven't heard any examples of harassment, I don't think you've been listening, because I sure have. And I know a little bit about it. I'm a lawyer. And I think Mary Beth had a fine example of harassment. I think I've heard several other examples of it as well. And if that's not perceived as harassment, that's part of the problem, and that needs to be addressed.
Okay, I don't know, Kevin, if you want me to respond to that specifically, but again, I look forward to reading the forms that are provided, and I would disagree with you on what can be perceived to be harassment. Respectfully, Kevin, you and I have spoken a little bit, and I appreciate what you do for the folks on the island. Without any specific details, I think it's difficult to say that. Let me ask this. My understanding from all of these interactions that took place specifically over the St. Patrick's Day weekend, there were no citations issued and there are no arrests were made. So if it's harassment for the police to have interaction with people and to try and verify that they're not under the influence, that everybody is being safe, then I'm not sure what the purpose is in having the police there.
Well, I think we've got a pretty good example from our recently departed deputy of what the point is and how it works. And I'm sorry, but if you think that talking to someone who explains that they've got a speech impediment because part of their tongue is cut out and the proper response is stop fucking with me, well, that's wrong and that's harassment. Stopping someone and claiming or pulling up to someone who's pulled over to find out why they're being followed and then telling them that, well, they're blocking the road and that's a reason to stop them. That's harassment. I'm not going to go on, but I really think you need to take a step back and think about this from the perspective of the people who are encountering these circumstances and maybe rethink that and maybe discuss it a little bit with the sheriff. We're certainly going to do it.
I look forward to having those reports turned in. And I look forward to the meeting with you guys and the sheriff. That'd be great.
I don't know how the reports is going to change what people said, but if that's what you need it.
All right, any other new stories? Any other comments or questions? I'd like to really wrap up here. Gosh, we've been here about an hour and 20 minutes, about 5 minutes. That's it. I'm going to call it.
I just want to point out to Scott, while I's might be dotted and T's might be crossed with regard to, oh yeah, you had a tail light out. So yeah, there's reasonable suspicion if you can't challenge it, and concern with the cross section of the community that we have on this Zoom call and in the auditorium and the over 500 people that have signed a petition on change.org. This is not something that should just be ignored. And it's not a situation where each traffic stop should be looked at individually. If you look at the whole big picture and the fact that there are so many of them, when you talk about, do we want police to interact with people? Of course we do. But traffic stops aren't the best way to interact with the community. And multiple traffic stops and following people, the same couple, more than one time, three miles down a road to their driveway. I had people tell me that they couldn't even see the lights of the cruiser behind them. It was so close to them. So nobody's saying, I don't think anybody here is saying, we don't want any police on Beaver Island and we love drunk driving on Beaver Island. We all know that if you don't want to get stopped, have a DD and don't do anything wrong. Well, a lot of people had that and still got stopped multiple times and got questioned. And a guy that's walking home from a bar with a pizza whose wife just got into a van, who has a flashlight thrown in his face and is questioned about why he's walking. And he's not the only pedestrian that I've heard that this has happened to. It's intimidating and it's not necessary. But, you know, we don't make the rules and we're not the sheriff and we're not the police, and the police have a lot of power. But all we're asking, I think, as a community, is that the police recognize the power that they do have and use it in a more constructive way, and not to make people afraid to go out of their house.
Well, if I can respond to that, Mary Beth, I would say that I am taking it seriously. I've spent the last hour and 20 minutes listening to this. And again, I look forward to the meeting with the township supervisors and the sheriff. I look forward to seeing further what's going on there. But I guess at this point, I don't have anything further to add.
My question / comment kind of feeds off the previous two commenters. Considering there were no known issued citations at the moment, the question that I would have would be more of the matter of, were the stops necessary? Considering no citations were issued, were the reason for the stops well articulated? Did they have a reasonable suspicion of a crime taking place? And for a crime to have taken place, there had to have been a victim. If there is no victim, there is no crime. So you can have someone pulled over for a reasonable suspicion of you might be committing a crime. Okay, what was it that the person you pulled over was doing? What were they doing that triggered you to believe there was reasonable suspicion? Now, for a headlight being out or a taillight being out, those don't constitute as crimes. Okay, your vehicle needs repair, but here on the island, not everybody has the ability to immediately get into a mechanic to say, hey, my taillight's out. Hey, my headlight's out. Hey, this needs repair. That needs repair. We're on an isolated island. It's not like we can just fly our car over to the mainland and get it fixed at a whim. So it's kind of a question of, for the people who are pulled over, truly, was it justified with reasonable suspicion, well articulated, or was it simply a predisposed bias?
All right, our last speaker has 2 minutes.
So it's like a presidential debate where I can go over.
Depends on what you say.
So this is extremely risky career move for me, what I'm about to tell you. As the assistant director, paramedic for Beaver Island, I work closely with the sheriff's department. I also work full-time in Charlevoix. I issued a warning to all my staff before this St. Patrick's Day that I knew a storm was coming, because I was told, you talk about predisposition biases. I was told by a uniformed officer in Charlevoix that they were sending somebody that's not politically correct with the way they speak, and someone who has the highest amount of DUI stops in Charlevoix County to the island for St. Patrick's Day. I was also told post-event by this uniformed officer and shown text messages of screenshots of the reactions that were posted on Beaver Island, this and that they were enjoying sharing and kind of enjoying the reaction they were receiving. Like I said, this is super risky, but it's my job to stand up for those without a voice. And
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I think we don't need to repeat where we're going from here, but we've got a lot of new information and new ideas and new ways to look at what happened. And we need to do due diligence and following up and proceeding. I will be on vacation next week, and I'm not going to think about many things on Beaver Island except 4 actions I have to get done while I'm on vacation. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for caring. This is a community that has to work together, and we are working together, and it shows. So,
Chris, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to do with this incident or the incidents plural of this last weekend, but I did have an encounter a few years ago that I know I was targeted. It was, I had just finished playing tennis. I met somebody for an early dinner at Stony Acre. I was pulling out after leaving Stony Acre, and this cop was, sitting in the medical center parking lot, just waiting for somebody to come out and find a citation. And, I pulled out to Kings Highway and turned left to go home, and then turned on Barney's Lake. And he followed me, but he never put lights on or anything like that, and turned the corner at Barney's Lake and stopped me. And, made some excuse about, what I was doing. And, and I said, he says, were you drinking? And I'm like, no, I wasn't. And, but I sat there on Barney's Lake Road for probably a half an hour while he was checking my credentials, and found nothing. But to me, that is harassment. So.
okay, another example. Thank you. You must fill out the forms, please. It's very important. If we don't have the data, we can't speak as eloquently as you guys can that have the experiences. It will be posted on online tonight, this and that, and other places. Please, if it's not you, it's someone let them know.
Hi,
We meet
Bobby.
Friday at 10 o'clock. Yeah. And Vicky, thank you. And Shelby, thank you. I got
Bobby or
to go
Vicky.
through tonight.